Welcome to the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation and acknowledge their strong connection to the land and waterways on which we gather. We pay our respect to elders past and present. We acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's spirit, imagination and rich history of storytelling and humour that inspires all Australians. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Right, good evening and welcome to Disruptive Comedy. My name's Adam Hills, I'll be your host this evening. We are mainly discussing comedy's ability to break down barriers tonight. We have Alex over here signing. We also have Mac, who's going to be joining in. I'd like to introduce the people on stage. Firstly, the woman to my left took out first place in the national final of the Raw Comedy Competition, the Melbourne International Comedy Festival in April 2022. She's performing as part of Comedy Zone at the Trades Hall. Please welcome Alexandra Hudson. Next to her is a lady who won Best Newcomer Award at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2022 and won the Funny Stage Women Award in London in 2021. She's on at the Western at 7:20, Lara Ricote. And on the end, a man who hails from Albury and has played all the major venues in the local area, the Wagga Comedy Festival, the Riverina Comedy Club and the Ulladulla Comedy Festival. He's also appeared as a guest on Dylan Alcott's podcast, Listenable. It's Oliver Hunter. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, all of you. I'm going to start by asking a question that someone once described the moment they fell in love with comedy as like a kid or whatever age, as like almost like a Scooby-Doo moment, almost like a moment of going, oh? What was the moment for you? I'll start with Alexandra. What was the moment that you fell in love with comedy?
I think it was watching... I think for me it was watching... what was it? It was Dave Chappelle in Men in Tights. It wasn't comedy. It was just like his sketch stuff.
The Mel Brooks movie?
Yeah, the Mel Brooks movie. I think that's like seeing that as a kid, and then obviously his career, and obviously it's quite controversial now, but that's my first memory of comedy as such. Like that movie is like burned into my brain, and obviously. Me even getting into comedy, I'm just like, I don't know how the fuck I got here. So,
I love the idea that somewhere Dave Chappelle would have heard the beginning of that and gone, yep, I've inspired another person.
Yeah.
Oh, from Men in Tights. Right.
Yeah. No, and not even from his comedy, but just from him as a character. Yeah.
What about you, Lara?
I think it was I had a really funny grandma. I had one of those funny grandmas that would like take out her teeth when she shouldn't, like that type of thing, like all of the time. I think it was like mainly the teeth taken out situation, just because it was like we had like a tense family that would fight, like tense, and then she'd take out her teeth, and it was like not the moment, of course, but doing that, like that type of situation, like was always just really, really nice to have in my family, and I always had that because of my grandma. So I think she was just like, this is the way to be a person, I thought.
Okay, so quite an eclectic mix so far. Dave Chappelle in Men in Tights and your grandma.
My grandma.
Oliver?
I think for me it's a couple of things. Watching the gala, the Comedy Festival gala, growing up at like 14, 15, watching it on... That was the only exposure I had to stand up. Mm-hmm. So watching like you and Will Anderson and going, what are these guys doing? And then, and until I was like 15, this is too old to think this, but I thought you all had real jobs. I thought you all just... I thought you just showed up to Melbourne for like 5 minutes, did a couple of... had some laughs and then went and was an accountant for the other 3. But even when I decided to do it, my first gig, my very first gig, halfway through it, I remember thinking, I'm going to do this forever.
Yeah.
Like, that was the moment I went, I love this, and whatever happens, if I do it full time, whatever, it's going to be a thing I do forever.
Yeah.
Is that the same for
I
everyone?
totally, for me,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
The first time I did it, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah, I remember people laughed and I was just like, oh, fuck, all right. No, sorry, I keep swearing, but like, I was just like, whoa, okay, this is the best feeling ever. It's like, what is
I
this?
certainly, because I mean, we were talking that backstage. There was a lovely conversation backstage about how long you've been doing it, which really clunked when I said 34 years. But I remember being 19, and at that point, I was at university, and I had tried various hobbies.
Yeah.
And I remember doing my first open mic night. It was university holidays, and then saying, "Oh, I want to go back to this every Wednesday." And my mum going, "Not when you've got university the next day." And I remember saying to her, "This is the thing I'm going to stick at 19." And I mean, I may have just stuck at it to prove her wrong. And so what did you learn from, I was going to say, what did you learn from watching comedy? I don't know what you learned from Dave Chappelle Men in Tights.
What not to do?
What did you take away from, what did comedy mean to you at that age?
Well, I think it was just like, even just Mel Brooks and just the storytelling. And like even like, you know, Robin Hood, it's such an iconic story. And just the complete ridiculousness that they added to it and just made it so much more colourful. And I think that's what I love about comedy is you can kind of take the mundane life things that happen and turn them into like I like to make fun of non-disabled people just for doing like making me feel bad about mundane things in my life. So I just like the idea that you can just take kind of mundane and add life to things, and then suddenly it evolves into this, like, even when you start doing a joke, it will start here and then it will just keep growing.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's over here and you're like, wow, that is really, there's life to it. And it just keeps getting better.
And same, what did you learn from your grandmother taking her teeth out?
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing that, I guess it's like probably something that we all have in common. It's like with being, like I'm hard of hearing and so I wear hearing aids and we have sort of like, and my older sister is hard of hearing and my family's just really sort of bad at talking. I mean, any family that only has like some people that are disabled and some people that aren't, just like you don't know how to talk about it and those sort of things. It's like humor in that mix just makes everything, it actually makes it accessible. It makes it accessible to have a conversation about a thing that you just wouldn't have had a conversation about otherwise. Because if you're just joking about it, then it's fine. Also, my grandma was like the first. That's the thing. When you're hard of hearing, people think you might just be dumb because you don't respond. Which is like you might also be dumb, but it's not. It doesn't like cancel each other out. But in our case, we weren't necessarily dumb.
Yeah.
My older sister and I weren't, and my grandma was like, I don't think these are dumb girls. I think they're just hard of hearing. But nobody took my grandma seriously, obviously, hence the teeth. After a while, it was her actually who ended up like figuring, like taking us to the people who let us know that we had that.
Wow.
So that's really good. Yeah, I think in terms of like what I learned from comedy, my mom always used to put like I think it's also Mel Brooks. It's like a Young Frankenstein, you know, that Gene Wilder one.
Yeah.
So stupid, that movie. It's great. That was like and like Lucille Ball, and it was just like also that's the thing. It's like it's just funny because it's so silly. It's so silly.
Yeah.
And silliness is such a great part of life. Like adding just a little bit of silly to the mix will change anything.
Yeah.
I don't know what I said.
I think for me, it was also, as well, when I look back in sort of my childhood, my family as well. My mum's hilarious. My brother is funny, but he doesn't know it. We're laughing at him. But my mum's, and I think for us, it was, I went through some pretty hectic times with, operations and hospital visits and doctors and stuff. And you realise that laughing and jokes is a coping mechanism and a bit of a defence mechanism, which sometimes can be a little bit unhealthy. But broadly, and like I realise that getting people to laugh is a great way to sort of educate and make them feel comfortable around. So when I went to uni and was meeting a whole bunch of new like people my age, 19, 20, it might have been the first time they saw someone or met someone with a disability. So I'd make jokes like, oh, we're going to get so drunk tonight, I'm going to start walking. Like, those sort of just silly things like that. And like you're talking about the silliness and And, the fact that I would go to the nightclubs and I would, do that. And for some people, that was huge. And to be friends with someone that does that and is that sort of ridiculous was a fun thing. And, but that was the thing too. I realised pretty early on, even before I started comedy, getting people to laugh was pretty cool.
And so you've mentioned your disability is your hearing.
I've got cerebral palsy. So
and I've also got cerebral palsy.
Sick.
Oh.
Yeah.
Double up.
Do you feel like
We're
looking at
everywhere.
him, you've got the shit version?
Me. Oh, yeah, I want a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Fuck, honestly, I hate walking, and walking has been the biggest bane of my existence my whole life, and it just made me think so I used to walk on my toes when I was 15, until I was 15, and I had my Achilles tendon cut, and they broke my femur, just so I could walk with my heel on the ground, and I was in a wheelchair, and my leg was stuck out like this, in front of me, and I couldn't use crutches because I'm onco and the plaster was too heavy. And my siblings, so I'm a triplet and we've got an older sister, and our older sister thought it'd be funny if she got a Milo tin and wrote donations and wheel me down the street. So yeah, it's that kind of, but it was fun. We got heaps of money.
Alex, you can just commit to the chair.
Yeah,
You can just be like, that's what I'm doing now.
That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
I probably could, and I'm
Because
like,
if walking's, this is quite a serious thing, but if walking's difficult for you, just get a chair.
yeah, I don't know. I think because it's been such a thing that I've done, and I have, I can walk, but I'm just the slowest person. So I think I do like that, and I wig people out, and I trip over a
cool.
lot, and that's fine because,
Yeah, no, nice.
it is what I think, because I've just done it for so long.
Yeah.
There will come a time where I probably will be in a chair,
Yeah.
and it's sick.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'll retire and I'll be on endo, and life will be good.
Yeah.
I know it's a thing because Rosie, this is off topic, but Rosie Jones, who's also
Yeah.
here at the festival, a few years ago she was in Tokyo for the Paralympics, and they provided her with a scooter, mobility scooter, and she kind of said it changed her life a little bit.
Yeah.
And in fact, we were on the same flight over 2 nights ago. I landed, and Rosie was on the same flight, and long story, we got off in Perth, and I said, I'll wait for you, and I'll take you to the lounge, and we went to the lounge because I'm fancy.
Adam's not like us.
But then when we got to Sydney, I basically said, I'll meet you at the baggage carousel. So I went down the baggage carousel and I was thinking, I wonder where Rosie is. I feel bad that I've left her behind.
Yeah.
And then she came up being pushed on a wheelchair going, "Whoa!" And then in front of everyone in the baggage carousel went, "I'm more disabled than you."
Good.
So there is a form of top trumps that goes on.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you decide to do comedy?
So for me, it was a bit of a happy accident. A friend of mine suggested I do a comedy workshop in 2019. And I had no clue that I wanted to do comedy. I just decided to do this workshop because I just wanted to challenge myself. And I thought it'd be the most hectic thing that I ever do. But I discovered it is the most hectic thing I'll ever do, but it's also the most fun. And so, I did that workshop, and then COVID happened, and I just kind of forced myself to do an open mic, and then that went well. And I was like, whoa. And then suddenly I was gigging in Brisbane and driving up to the 2 hours or 3 hours on the Pacific Highway, spending way more time on the highway than ever on stage. But it's it's so addictive, and that's how it started for me.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah, for me, I've been doing it for 4.5 years. I live in Amsterdam. I'm from Mexico, but I live in Amsterdam. And I did it once because I took an improv class. I took an improv class that was just a really fun. My little sister told me to take an improv class, and I took an improv class, and I was like, oh, this is really great. This is just you get to just have fun with other adults, and you don't have to talk, which is so nice. And I did that, and a week later, I signed up to an open mic. That went really well, and it was in Amsterdam, there's not really a comedy scene, so it was either have a night or you don't really get to gig very often. And so I started a comedy night with a friend in my university, and then we were just like doing that once a week, and then that sort of just like, but it was good because there was only like maybe 4 women, which is not good in the comedy scene, but that meant that I got to have like 15 minutes at a time.
Amazing.
When like I should not have been having 15 minutes at a time, but I was, and so that gave me just a lot of stage time really early on.
Yeah.
And that was how it happened for me.
Well, and that's the interesting thing with the three of you, just I know from talking backstage, is, you know, this could also be a panel about doing comedy when you live in an unlikely place to do comedy. Because you're Byron Bay, you're the Netherlands, and you...
I'm from Albury, grew up in Albury, but I started comedy in Wollongong, of all places.
Of course.
As you do, it was a pump and scene at one point, to be fair. I just got thrown, I saw a sign for the Wollongong Comedy Club, and I was a bit drunk in the back of a cab. And I was like, I'm going to find out about doing comedy. And I emailed the guy, Stu is his name, he's still in this doing it. And I said, hey, can I do a spot? And he got back to me and said, yeah, here are 3 dates. It's a pro night, but I'll slot you in and do 5 minutes. We don't have an open mic night yet because we don't have a lot of new, fresh comedians. So just pick one and do 3 to 5 minutes. And I picked the furthest one from the day that I got the email. So I had 6 weeks to, and he said to me, he was great. He said, just write 2 jokes. And that's all I need from you. I want people to like you and forget you. And then if you're good, and then we met up afterwards, and he said, I think you got something, I want to help you do it.
Amazing.
And,
Right.
Yeah.
And then I know you then started creating more gigs for yourself.
So in Albury, and I work with, there's a good crew in Wagga, which is about 2 hours from Albury. But I think for me, physical access is a battle. Like a lot of rooms in the cities like Melbourne, Sydney, they're either, downstairs, upstairs, through a tunnel. So it was, for me, I had a moment even like this time last year after the festival, because the festival was great because it's like this utopia for comedy.
Yeah.
And you get to the end, and then I sort of had this real moment of like somewhat despair, and I was real like depressed because I'm like, where's my next gig coming? How am I going to do this? And then I sort of sat back and went, well, you can either quit or you figure it out. So you do some digging around. I knew a lot of people anyway, and I found some accessible gigs already, but then I've in the last sort of 6 months really working on with venues that are accessible. If they don't have a gig, why not? And let's get a gig going, because I want a good gig to start with for other comedians, but I also selfishly want my own stage time. So similar to you, Lana. So it's that's all. That's sort of the mentality I have, is just figure it out, and it'll happen.
Do you think that's a disability thing? Because I think we've all got disabilities, and we've all had to figure something out and work our way past something.
Yeah.
So whatever it is in life, I'd like to think that it's kind of, I don't want to use that word superpower because it's overused, but it's certainly a benefit of having a disability is you adapt, you learn how to adapt.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't hear so many things, and I'm always just getting by. I feel it's such a weird thing because without not hearing well, like I have really good hearing aids now, so that's really good. They have Bluetooth, but that's amazing, and like that really changed my life. But when I don't, like even I think I hear like 7 out of 10, if that means anything to anyone. So a lot of things I just get sort of by context. Like I just kind of I'm like hope I got it right, and I'll just go with like the first kind of gut feeling of like what I think, and like a lot of times it's right, and if it's not, it's also always really funny. That's mainly the thing. It's like whatever I thought, I'll just go with that, and people have a good time with that. That's a fun thing to do.
Well, we had that backstage when Alexandra was talking about P&O cruises.
I heard pedo cruises. Yeah. I was like, that's what you have here in Australia? That's super weird.
All right, so here's my next question then. How long after you started doing comedy, like, did you start talking about your disability? Because I'm assuming it varies because yours is clearly more visible, Oliver. So did you start off with jokes about it?
Mine was my first joke immediately. I was like, elephant in the room, I'm not going to stand up. Like, I now like vomit inside when I hear that joke because it's to me, a real hacky kind of joke. But I just got straight up there and went, this is the thing. Let's get on board. And that's sort of been my mentality ever since. It's he said, Adam, very visible. I can't hide it or anything with a pant leg, like you got the luxury of doing that. So it's Adam's. He actually has one. So yeah, he's not just in it for the parking, everyone. But no, I think for me it was straight away. I just went, this is a big part of me. This isn't my only thing. But also a big thing for me was when I wrote my first bit or proper jokes that weren't related to my disability. That was when I went, I can be a comedian.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. I feel that exact same thing.
Yeah.
So that because sometimes you're like, oh, maybe this is why I'm funny and this is maybe the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, and if I stop talking about my hearing aids or the fact that I can't hear stuff, maybe people don't want to hear about the other stuff that I want to talk about. And I think so I've been doing it like 4.5 years. I think I just did, like maybe a year ago, my first, 15 minutes where I just didn't mention it, and it was crazy to me to do that. Yeah, it was like, and then but the thing, because if I don't say it, they don't know. So that I'm just like, oh, I'm just a regular girl. Oh, yeah. That's a weird thing that somebody would. I don't know. Like I usually don't get heckled when I talk about it, obviously, because it's offensive to heckle me. But like it's nice to kind of be like, to see if, maybe I will get heckled. I don't know. I don't want to. But yeah, I think I didn't do it. The first time I went on stage, I didn't talk about my hearing aids. And the second time I went on stage, I had to write new material because it was in the same night, because there was only one night in Amsterdam at the time. And so I had to write 10 new minutes, which is so long. And then I talked about my hearing aid the second time. And then I just kind of was like, oh, this is what I have to say. Like, this is what's interesting about me. I think that's why I ended up doing my hour now is, my hour is called Girl Latin Deaf, and it's, kind of about, what my minority groups I'm in. Feels like people want to hear about that when they find out that you're a minority in so many ways. But it's also nice to be able to say, okay, great, did that. Now this is what I find funny now. It has nothing to do with the fact that I can't hear, even though, the fact that I can't hear made my personality the way that it is. Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, well, for me, I pretty much exclusively at this point talk about disability. And I see it as making people uncomfy in their seats, as payback for making me uncomfy in the streets. So, because I just sort of because obviously sitting here it's not obvious, but when I'm out in the world, people always just do weird shit to me. So I think it's just until I run out of material that I think's funny, and it's about mostly making fun of non-disabled people, I'm definitely keen to not always talk about it, but I still feel like I'm still working out my voice and talking about who I am. So for me, I love talking about this stuff, and I love making non-disabled people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I guess that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you decide that you talk about it because you want to, not because you feel like people want you to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's like an accent or something that you're like, why isn't she saying anything about the fact that she can't say the S?
Yeah.
You know? That type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I found, so when I started doing comedy, I remember similar thing to you. I was emceeing at the Comedy Store in Sydney, and there were only 50 people in the second show, but 40 of them had been in the first show. And I only had 15 minutes of material, and I had done all my material. So I thought I would do a joke about my foot. And I said, I've got a prosthetic leg. And I said, I was at a party the weekend before, and someone had said, can you still have sex? And I left it at that. And afterwards, one of the older comics took me aside and he said, you're not good enough to talk about your leg yet. And I was like, what?
What?
And he said, you're still learning how to do comedy. It was only early on. And he said, you're still learning how to do comedy, right? You don't know all you did was say a funny thing about it. You didn't say anything. He said, you need to, and he it was pretty bold of him. He said, you need to get better. You need to ply your craft and get really good at this and work out why you want to talk about it. And when you do that, you will be unstoppable. So for 13 years, I never mentioned my prosthetic leg.
Shut up.
And because people couldn't see it. You walk out on stage, people didn't know.
Yeah.
And then it was only, and I ended up talking about it on stage, it was after September 11. I went through Heathrow Airport 3 days after September 11, and my foot set off the metal detectors. And I ended up turning it into a bit because the guy was like, "What's going on?" And I went, "Oh, it's a prosthetic leg." And he went, "Oh shit, sorry, go through." Didn't check.
Just
didn't check. Didn't look. And the punchline I came up with was like, he had a look on his face that said, "I don't care if the plane goes down. I don't want to offend a spastic. Just go, just go." But that line summed up why I wanted to talk about my foot, which is like, why are you so freaked out? It's fine to ask me about it. It's fine to check. I'd rather know that the plane's safe. And that's when I realised that also coincided with the first year in Edinburgh that I was nominated for the Perrier Award. So something in my head went, oh, you've been nominated for this thing, so you must be good enough now. And now I've also worked out why I want to talk about it, which is to make people comfortable with it. So all of those things came together at once. But I found, as soon as I went on stage and talked about it, you could feel the audience go, "Why are you telling us this? We can't see it. It's not obvious. Why are you bringing this up?" So I had to then explain why I was talking about it. So, and which kind of leads me to my next question, which is, how did people react when you start? Because I dare say it's different reactions, because with you, Oliver, as you said, it's the elephant in the room. They can see you're in a wheelchair. You do a joke about it. I'm assuming there's relief straight away. Yeah,
I mean, and a lot of the gigs I do at these pokey little bars that I can get to and clubs, I actually can't get on the stage a lot of the time, so I do it in the audience. So I have to make jokes about how not getting on the stage, like, oh, I rolled the ankle, like all those, just real silly. But like that's another way to go. Let's release some tension. Like it's happening here, so get on my level and get on board, because this is where I'm doing it. Like I can't. It's be easier for me to do it here. There's not that lift in. If I could bring that lift everywhere, that would be great. But that's. I think I sort of take that moment and not like make a TED talk about it, but just go, get on my level. This is how I'm doing it. So let's have a good time. And what about you, Lara? Did people do you think it was obvious to people when you walked on stage that you were deaf?
No, no, yeah. I mean, definitely. I think a lot of people don't know. They just think I have a retainer, and that's mostly what people think. But I don't. I swallowed it a long time ago. I just came up with that yesterday. I was really happy when I wrote that. What's it called? No, I think sometimes I feel like when it's like a Friday night and you're at a club and you're like, I'm going to talk about my disability now. I feel like people are like, shut your freaking mouth right now. We're trying to have a good time on a Friday, and you're bringing up your disability. There's problems in the world. But I don't know, and it's probably a mixture of being a woman and also being disabled, that you want everybody to be okay all of the time, and it's this feeling of wanting to have to bring it up with all of the lightness in the world. It's yeah, I am, but don't even worry about it because we're gonna have so much fun. You know what I mean? And it's just this sort of thing where you're just trying to keep it light all of the time. I think one day when I'm comfortable enough, probably in 13 years, I will do a show where I talk about the things that I genuinely feel about it. But I think because I started talking about it so early on my comedy career, I think I just kind of my relationship to my disability is this is the place of this is funny. This is funny. Period. You know, I don't have an emotional relationship with my disability. Also because my sister does. My older sister disabled the same way, and she has an emotional relationship to it, and kind of shame related. So I had the feeling I can't have shame in this. There can't be. I have to be just cool about it. I talk about it. I don't even care. You know. But at the same time, of course, there are shame aspects, and there are a lot of things that I think I'm still I'm young, and I've known I'm disabled since I was 3 years old, but there's so many things. I'm going so in depth, but there's so many things about your personality that have to do with the fact that you are disabled. You don't really know, I guess. I mean, I hadn't really. But now you bring that up about the relationship with disability, it's probably improved for me, my relationship with my disability through stand-up, because also telling jokes about it and being funny about it, and making money off it's handy as well. That's the good part.
Monetizing it's pretty sweet. If you, I'm the guy you get when you can't afford Dylan Alcott. So if you need a keynote, guys, let me know. Dylan charges 5 figures in a car. I charge 4 figures in a beer. So But no, I think that's, and yeah, just being open about it. I've become more open about it because I'm talking about it on stage, and then that's opened up my life to a lot of other things. And as I said, it's improved my relationship. I was never sort of denying it because it's hard to deny when it's sort of this like visible. But yeah, it's definitely improved in the last 8 years since I started stand up.
And then, so for you, especially gigging in Queensland, which can be kind of rough,
Yes.
what's the audience reaction like?
So I'll say, like, kind of opposite to you. I don't like to make people. I don't like to reassure people in my comedy. I want to make them laugh, and I do a really good job of doing that. So I kind of, but I'm so tired of being the disabled woman who has to like, oh, it's okay, I'll hold space for you, yeah, thank you, oh, you're so, I'm like, no, actually, I'm annoyed at you, and I think, like, we can all agree, growing up disabled can be really tough.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's not,
It's not a walk in the park.
It's a
Zing.
it's a very long walk.
Yeah.
Still there. Is she okay? Where is she? No, you know, I'm now 35. I spent my 20s just like depressed and sad. And I got to my late 20s and I was just like, no, I love being a cripple. This is who I am. It's who I've always been. And yeah, it's not my job. It's like, it's not my job to make people feel comfortable. It's their job to be better, you know, to be more inclusive and change shit for us. So in my comedy, I'm really mindful of not letting people off the hook. And it can be really awkward sometimes. And Queensland can be particularly hostile. I don't know if it's like because I'm from New South Wales thing and they can feel that. Or,
Is it because you're not drinking 4X? Is that?
Yeah, I prefer VB. It's really.
I do like the idea that audiences in Queensland are like, we don't care about the disability. You support the wrong team.
Like, fair enough, sorry. But yeah, I think for me, I think Queensland's actually made me a better performer because it's made you kind of really, you have to get good quick because they're too drunk to listen, or they want to fight you, or they're just, no, not really. But for me, it's just like, I know who I am off stage. I know how we're perceived within our communities. And like, I'm proud and I want to make fun of that and just talk about the things that I find funny. And that won't always make people comfortable, but that's not my job. You know, I'm not a Paralympian.
All right, so what are the challenges that you all faced, getting into comedy in the industry, but with a disability? So let's start again with Oliver, because access is the first one.
I touched on it before, but access is the big one. The conversation I've had with so many comedians, the point where I've got a little bit snappy, but I try and keep it cool, is they'll go, when I was new to the Melbourne scene, I'll do a gig and I'll do well enough, and they'll go, I got you I can get you this gig, I got you that gig, I run this night. And I'm like, what's the access like? And they're like, oh yeah, it's up 4 flights of steps, or it's down 3 flights of steps, or it's in a tunnel. So then they go, oh yeah, you couldn't do that one, you couldn't do this one. And so I'm at a point, I've figured it out now where I can probably, there's at least 1 gig a night on the 7-day week that I could get on, but there's so many that you can't. And this might sound a bit hypocritical, and I've sort of had to make peace with this, but there are even gigs like I do that I can physically get to that aren't in officially accessible venues. So then I'm kind of like at a bar in Brunswick, it's up 1 step, but once you're in, it's up 1 step, and then once you're in, it's flat, and I can get to a stage or get to the microphone, but it might not have an accessible bar, or it might be flat off the street, but it might not have an accessible bathroom. So I either have to clock where a toilet is somewhere else, or just do the spot and then go, because I'm like, well, I can't sit here for 2 hours with the other comedians because I can't go to the toilet. So that's hard too, because then I'm like, I'm excluding my own people in some way, because I'm like, well, I can get to the gig because it's up 1 step, I'm in a manual chair, I can transfer and I'm pretty strong. But if you're in a big power chair, you couldn't get up a step.
Yeah.
So that is tough. But if I went exclusively properly, fully accessible venues, I'd have 2 gigs I could do in a week in Melbourne.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can get into the venue, but other people in wheelchairs in the audience possibly can't.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's something I had to reconcile and go, right. But then, as I said, if I went with this hard line of it has to be accessible bathroom and like a venue like this, then I'd do 2 gigs a month.
Yeah.
But the physical access is the issue, because I know people that, as I said, run these gigs in inaccessible venues, and from a talent point of view and just from a networking point of view, I could get on all these other spots, but you can't. And I don't want to throw too much shade at the festival. Thanks for having me. But there's like 3 or 4 major venues, and also artist hangouts that I can't access.
Right.
Yeah.
So whether it's a showcase venue or just an artist bar or other comedy clubs, I can't get to them.
Right.
So that's a battle, but that's the conversation I had with myself a year ago.
And bit by bit, that starts to change, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm a bit tired of the argument, it's an old building, so bad luck. So, well, we did fix it. You would have fixed the bathroom since 1804. It's so, can we work on it? Can we work on it?
I see a lot of non-disabled people using lifts, so they love them.
Yeah. So, but that's, as I said, that's what I've had to figure out, and I really had to work on my relationship with stand-up, because I think between the 4 of us, the last thing I want to become is bitter.
Yeah.
So as soon as I become bitter, that's when I have to hang it up.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm trying to avoid, and I do have a lot of great, because when I started stand-up, there was an element for me. I think I've found my people. So even though it's a battle and there's so much inaccessibility in some ways, I decided as well that I was lucky when I first started, met some great people, and I went, I'm going to only hang out with good people in this industry.
Yeah.
That was a big moment for me as well.
And I would have thought accessibility would have been the issue for you, or at least an issue for you. What about you, Lara?
I guess a couple of things. In general, I read lips, so that's really a big part of that's a really big part of my access to things. So there's that part of shows sometimes kind of sucks. If I can't, it just means that I watch a lot of my comedy online instead of in real life. Cause just sound and stuff in general, in the bars where I do it, it's kind of shitty. And if it's not extra good, then it's just so much stuff. It's just so much trying that I'm so tired by the end of the day that I just rather not do it. And too bad, because I love comedy and I want to be in the room. I want to feel everybody. I love that. So that would be really nice. Not that big of a deal, that part. I think the biggest thing is being able to be in the room and be in control, because the comic is always they're one step ahead of you, and they're able to, if anything happens in the room we love it when they're dang, zinger at anything that happens, picking up on and I can't do that because I can't understand most of the things, and I can't do crowd work, which is whatever, boo-hoo me, but I can't really in the ways that people like to be comfortable. It means that everybody the lights being off is really helpful for people to laugh at stuff. But then that means I'm not super in control of how much people are laughing at the stuff I'm saying. And sometimes people just smile. And it's I'm so glad that you're having a good time, but I have no idea, those are because I just need access to all of the little bits and pieces of sound. Luckily though, I just got sponsored. My hearing aids got sponsored because of a TikTok that went viral, which is wonderful. Who knew? And this company wrote me, and they've given me these new hearing aids, and they come with a little microphone, so I can kind of put it in the stage. And technology is getting a lot better, so I'm able to have things that really just they make my life so much better, and they let me feel I'm in control. Because I think that there's only so many like backs and forth that you can have with the audience when you don't hear what the audience is saying. That's funny for the audience until they're like, okay, can we get on with it? And I'm like, but I'm confused, you know? It's like, I don't know what's going on right now.
Yeah.
I wish that I knew. I wish I had like a better hold. But I think if I'm ever rich and famous, I will have like just little microphones in everywhere in the audience,
Yeah.
which I think might be a privacy issue, but I would do it. I would. And that way I can just be one step ahead. I did do a caption show because I'm hard of hearing, and my family just never, like, we were not involved in like the deaf community because it was always like a diagnosis for later. It was like, oh, you will be deaf. We have a degenerative hearing loss. But it was like, hopefully technology will get better. That's kind of like the thing. And so we just never spoke sign language. And I lived in the US and then now in the UK, and like sign language is different. And it's always like, when do I learn it? When? What kind? So I'm just like, I'm always like, I rely on captions heavily. And I got to do in the Soho Theatre in London a caption show with like a stenographer. And that was the coolest thing I've ever done. It was like 13 people who were deaf or hard of hearing came, and like, it was just like, that would be my dream thing, that was in every show there was, but I mean, then you have to have a stenographer, and that's very expensive. They usually work in court, and they'd be at like comedy shows to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's my dream is that I would have always like caption. My next show is going to be captioned now that I know that's a possibility. But obviously it's expensive, and it's always like an out-of-pocket cost that you have to just be, putting. But I think that's just like not being in control is kind of like my biggest thing.
And Alex?
I'd say similar to Oliver in terms of accessibility, because I always have, so I can navigate stairs if there's railings and that sort of stuff. But if it's even like the festival is great, there's so many shows around this city, but it takes me like double time if I'm walking. And Ubers and taxis never want to pick you up in the city because it's such a short distance. They get really annoyed at you. They kind of yell at you. So I'm sick of being yelled at by a taxi driver who won't drive me 500 metres because I'm like, oh, well, I'll miss that show. So I've had to kind of manage my expectations of even doing a full festival run and being like, how many shows can I see in a night, depending on how long it takes me to get from A to B. And it's the same thing, like I need help onto stages if it's a small stage. Usually a backstage is like upstairs. So it's just all those extra things that I have to navigate that, I'd love to just rock up to a gig and know that it's accessible and not have to ask questions or email or like the very least the venue contacts you to find out what your access needs are. Like that's what I want to see more of, instead of us having to have that constant conversation and us having to ask all these questions. I kind of want it to just be assumed, okay, what are your needs? What will make you feel safe and comfortable in this space, and what can I do? Instead of me being like, hey, is there stairs? Hey, is there this? I'm learning
most of my day.
Yeah.
Comedy is like messaging people, and they might get back to you. And then they usually get back to you with, nah, sorry.
Yeah. And I found like if I'm performing in a new space, I'll rock up like half an hour earlier just to get oriented to where everything is, because I'm like, oh, it could just be, there could be random stairs, or I've got to talk to the MC to get them to help me onto stage, and I've got to all these kind of logistical things. And I think opposite to you, when I'm actually on stage, I feel the most in control. Like I don't feel control in any other aspect of my life, but when I'm on stage performing and talking about what I want to talk about, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. This is it. And it it makes the similar, like it's the stuff we put up with in order to just be in these spaces, which I think are really frustrating, but it's kind of like, oh, well, at least we're up here and we're visible and we're talking about this stuff. And so that's how the change, even though it's so slow, it's slower than how I walk, so which is frustrating because I'm really slow. It is changing. So,
and it's such a simple thing that it's possible that people would never have considered it before. But if you own a venue and you've got acts on, how hard is it to put at the end of the requirements, what microphone do you need, what kind of lighting?
what are your access needs?
What are your access needs? It's
Yeah.
just a question. It's a simple question. And, you know, at the very least, someone who books anyone with a disability should think ahead.
Yeah.
But why should it just be when you're booking people with a disability?
Totally. And that's it. I think it's like, I get really frustrated as well when people, you know, you can't even point, when they're like, but this is an old building. I'm like, well, you chose this building to an extent, you know, like, it's like, you know, where it's 2023, I'm like, can't we just get rid of the old buildings?
Yeah.
Heritage is overrated.
Yeah,
in my book.
heritage.
You're virtually saying, oh, don't worry, we've never let disabled people in.
Yeah.
It's not a new thing.
You should have seen it 200 years ago.
So what are the positives of having a disability, especially in this industry?
I got this gig.
We'll never run out of content.
Yeah. I think it's really nice to like be able to talk about that sort of thing if you want to on stage. I think it's really nice to like, it's a really great thing to find other people who have the same thing that you have. I think like that's been really nice in terms of like social media, like having talked about it on stage, people just like ask you for hearing aid recommendations, or like people like it's like those sort of things. And it's like I've never had a community aspect to my disability. I always felt like that. Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like it was another adjective of mine. I'm finding out now that I'm like these sort of things actually really help me in terms of like. Yeah, I feel so many times I hear people talk about stuff that I'm like, hey, yeah, me too. I do get that's hard for me too. And I'm like, yeah, that's what community's about, huh? That's why people do that they hang out with other people who have the same needs. I just never did that.
Yeah.
Because I had my sister and I was like, we know, but we didn't talk about it either. So just weird. So I think
feel that. Yeah, that's how it was for me as well.
People
it's
just
like,
saying,
and you just, if you, like, I had 3 non-disabled siblings. So we were just siblings, you know, and I wasn't connected to the disabled community forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You find out so many things about yourself and you're like, like that's why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
And I mean, stand up, the only place where you are just constantly talking, pretty much people are like not allowed to talk to you, which is great for if you can't hear. Yeah. It's like some people break the rules, but in general, really like I am in control in that way. It's like, and I'm so talkative if you have not noticed. I talk all of the time and I talk super fast and I'm always trying to get as many words in because I know what I'm saying when I'm saying it. But when other people are saying it, I'm like, yeah, that. So yeah.
I had a nice moment the other day actually when I was putting up some content to advertise for my show, and I got a message on Instagram from a woman, and she said, I have a disability, and it was she goes, I really like the joke. No one, I've never really heard anyone talk funny about disability, and I do like comedy, but I'm always anxious to go because I'm a bit anxious socially as well. But I'm going to come to your show. I'm going to bring my sister. We're going to come to your show, and she's seen your clip as well, and we're going to come. And I was like, and it has this nice moment of 1, I've sold 2 tickets, and 2, it's like here's someone that may not go out very much.
Yeah.
And then I've sort of brought down a little barrier for them to just come out and enjoy someone that they relate to on more than just I like the comedy.
Yeah.
So that was a cool little thing, and I think for me it's always going to be jokes first. As I said, I'm not up here trying to do a TED talk, but if I am available, but
I did one.
Yeah, there you go. But I think it's always going to be for me jokes first. I think the idea that we're not all Paralympians, and it's okay. I made that decision too when I was a bit younger that I'm not going to be a Paralympian. So what else am I going to do? And this is where I've landed.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the benefits for me. I've found my own path. That there isn't this pressure to be a certain thing when you have a disability. I've made it happen.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So on that, I'm going to ask this question: how do we feel about the word inspirational? And go.
First thing that comes to my mind is Stella Young. Stella Young. She was a disabled activist from here in Melbourne, I think, yeah. And she did a TED talk about it. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
But
They must pay well.
Yeah. No, they don't pay at all. Let me
there
tell
you
you. I was working at Woolies when I was in my 20s, and I was cleaning up a spill of washing powder, and a guy wanted to write an article about me. And I was like, wow, this is a great article. I can clean spills that I created. Come see my show. No, but yeah, it really, non-disabled people have set the bar so low for us that it's kind of a good thing. Like, we don't have to do much. Like, yeah, I feel like I'm almost liberated by that idea. But on the other side, it's really annoying.
Yeah. So, and for context, Lara, Stella Young coined the phrase "inspiration porn," of which was the kind of fetishization. Is that?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Of people with disabilities, of going, oh my God, let's use them in advertising. And I always find there's a fine line because I think we are pretty bloody inspirational sometimes.
I was going to say, we do some cool shit.
We do some cool shit. Do you know what? That should be the slogan for disability. We do some cool shit.
And sometimes we do nothing. Both are cool.
So it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And you're bringing up the idea of Paralympians. Like, not everyone. I know there was a bit of a backlash to that idea that they're superhuman, because not everyone is superhuman.
Yeah.
Some people with disabilities just want to go to uni or TAFE and get a job and live that life and pay their rent in a share house, go to a pub. And I think talking about that inspiration, like the bar's so low, there's the Paralympian level, and people go, oh yeah, sick, you're a Paralympian, like that's awesome. But then they're shocked that you have a job. Why I find that gap so fascinating. It's like Kurt Fearnley crawled Kokoda.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. Like, let's not knock that. That's incredible. So you can't see that and go, yeah, cool, people with disabilities can do that. Oh, but you work at Woolies? That's all? Like, how do you do that? You're like, well, I don't know, I applied. That's a gap that I always find interesting. And it is getting somewhat smaller. I think it's getting a bit more mainstream, some of the disability chat. But yeah, that the inspiration word, I'm a bit similar to you, Adam. I don't have as much as a visceral relationship with it. I think it's just pick your moments to use the word.
That's a good way of putting it.
But I think the more normal it becomes, like the less like it's inspirational if it's an idea of a person, but if you have a buddy who's disabled, like you're not going to be inspired, but because they eat cereal in bed and stuff like that. Like they're like gross like you and normal, like so it's like the more normal the closer you are to people with disabilities, the less inspirational it is. I guess.
I think to round out for me on the point is when I was at uni and doing the nightclub thing and the pub thing and the drinking thing and all that stuff, I used to have that relationship with it where people go, oh, so how are you out? Like, and they'd come up to me drunk and it would be a whole thing. And then I would always get snappy and a bit aggressive. And then a mate did pull me aside and goes, I understand that the ignorance is there and I understand, can someone understand why you're frustrated? Like, he doesn't have the lived experience like I do. But he goes, look around, how many people in this nightclub are in wheelchairs? He goes, one, and you're it. So he said, this person may not have seen a person with a disability in public before, and let alone on a nightclub dance floor ripping it up. Like, so that for me is when I sort of tried to work on my relationship with people's attitudes and sort of where I am now and doing that sort of work.
It's really hard. I even snapped at someone today. I picked my daughter up from school and we were walking home, and the old Greek guy that always walks past was on the other side of the road and shouted out, "Hello to you!" And I'm like, "Hello." And he went, 2 more days, then Easter. And I'm like, "Yay, it's Easter." And then he went, "Good luck with your recovery." And I was like, "What?" And I was in shorts.
Yeah.
And my only thought was he saw my prosthetic leg and thought I'd hurt myself. Yeah. And out loud in front of my daughter, and this is why I'm kicking myself, I went, "Ha, thanks, idiot." And she went, "Why is he an idiot?" And I went, "Oh, okay, now I have to explain that I'm being a dick."
Yeah.
And I went, "Well, because he said, 'Good luck with your recovery,' and it's because he thinks I've broken my leg, where it's not. I've just got a prosthetic leg." And then I paused and went, actually, maybe he knows I've just landed and I've got jet lag. Like, it could have been that.
Yeah.
Like, for all
Well,
I know, this guy's gone, yeah, you landed on Monday. Oh, hope you get some sleep.
Maybe it's because you're a celebrity and he thinks you're in rehab. That's not true.
So, a final question to each of you. What changes would you like to see? I mean, we've already mentioned one, checking up on accessibility.
Yeah.
What changes would you like to see? And let's look for the moment, let's say, because we're, the comedy festival, in the industry, in the entertainment industry, what's one change that could be implemented that would make life easier for people with disabilities, not just performers?
I think for me, the industry, the festival, approaching venues that are accessible, working on getting grants or working with sort of governing bodies that have a bit of cash maybe, and putting on, like, actively working with the disability community, putting on shows and opening up opportunities for other people, because like we're doing it, but we've made it happen, and because we're arrogant and like full of ourselves a little bit. But so many people may not have that extrovertness and that personality, and they might have got to the first hurdle and went, I don't want to do this because it's too hard. But so I think if the industry or the festivals went to venues and went outside festival time too, and sort of went as the beacon and become, rather than we could bag out venues for not being accessible all day long, but let's find venues and champion them and sort of twist it a little bit.
Yeah, I think normalising it.
Yeah.
Just normalising accessibility and inclusion as like what you want your comedy club or your comedy venue to be, or your cafe or your restaurant. Just like having us be not only in the audience but as performers. Just having that a part of an ethos of a club or the community. Like you said, to look at what are the gaps and how can we bridge those? And obviously it's expensive, but it's like there's money. We can buy submarines that are like so old. There's money for the arts and there's money for accessible arts. It's just like, I think that's what I would like to see. Just that kind of, from the get-go, this idea that, we can make this better and we can approach venues that are not 10,000 flights of stairs, or no Auslan interpreters, or difficult for vision impaired or blind people to navigate, all that sort of stuff. It's like we can do it, it's possible.
I know, I second all this stuff. I would like also a caption show, just one caption show for every show at a festival. I think it's just like, that's the thing, sometimes you get so specific with your need, but it's like, that's what I would really need. That would make me be able to go to all of the shows. If there were just one day that all of the shows had caption.
And see, that's something I've never considered, because like whenever I do the festival, every Sunday I have a sign interpreter.
Right.
But that still doesn't allow you to come to the show necessarily.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So I'm always just like, hope someone does it, but like, I wouldn't ask about that. It's just a bunch, because it's like, but unless there's like, that's the thing. If people with disabilities are part of the conversation in the first instance, it doesn't have to be like this sort of feeling of like, oh, I really don't want to be annoying, but I can't understand anything, and I love this, and I wish I could. Or like, I'm here, and like, there's people I admire and respect all of it, and I just can't go, So that's like, it's unfortunate, that part.
It seems to me the solution is what you just said, people with disability as part of the conversation in the first instance. Once they're there from the get-go, then you don't have to consult them afterwards. And look, to be fair, as someone who's been doing the festival for a number of years, and I remember, thank you so much for being here. I remember, I'm going to say maybe 20 years ago, being part of an article in The Age about comedians with disabilities at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and it was myself, it was someone with a hearing impairment, and it was an English comedian called Daniel Kitson, and he was included because he had a stutter. That's how desperate they were to find comedians with disabilities. They couldn't find 3 comedians at the festivals with disabilities. They had to go, you guys, the stutter, does that count? And I remember Daniel going, this is shit. This is not a disability. Whereas now we've got 4 on stage, and Rosie Jones can't be here because she's doing her show. So there has been giant leaps forward, but people with disabilities as part of the conversation in the first place, I think is certainly my takeaway.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to wrap up because you have to get to your show at the Trades Hall. It's 7:20. You can make it there if you want to go straight from here.
The Western.
At the Western.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm
you're the
Trades
Trades Hall. Sorry, you're the Trades Hall. You're the Western, and you start next week at Acme.
Next Tuesday the 11th, so after your Easter hangover, come to my show. Acme and Wheels of Fortune is the show title.
But honestly, it won't be weird to follow Lara to her show now.
It won't. It's totally fine.
Are you going out the front door?
I'm going to run to the back and get my bag. But yeah, please come if you'd like. That'd be so nice.
Follow the can we have a round of applause for everyone who's saved Alexandra, for Lara, and for Oliver. Bye, go! Also, can we have a round of applause for our sign interpreters, Mac and Alex? And a round of applause for everyone here at the venue who have made us feel very comfortable and accessible from the get-go. So thank you to everyone here. Thank you to anyone who's watching on streaming. That's the end of it. You will have noticed on the way in we chose specific music for the raising. Oliver has chosen his own music for the lowering of the ramp. You can't see it at home because of copyright issues. But thank you and enjoy the festival.